Growing up, we all nurture personal hopes and aspirations, and Adam and Liza were no exception. The couple eagerly yearned to start a family and make their home echo with the sound of beautiful children's laughter. They didn't aspire to be parents of just any children. They dreamed of children of extraordinary beauty, brilliant intelligence, and success. They didn't think they were unattainable desires. After all, they were both pleasant-looking people, and they considered it natural that their children, heirs of such a genetic heritage, would shine with beauty. Now let's see how things went. In the meantime, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so as not to miss other exciting stories. These children, gifted and successful, would have meant a personal triumph for Adam and Liza, a reversal of their modest origins and the difficulties faced in their youth. After high school, they had to interrupt their studies because their families could not afford the costs of university. Both had chosen to work immediately, accumulating money to get married and open a food truck, their dream. They were content with a modest apartment, their small business, and what they needed to look after the children they would have. They had no great aspirations. A short holiday once a year would have been enough. They married young, and shortly thereafter, Liza became pregnant. They were over the moon. Everything seemed to be going well. At 18 weeks, the ultrasound showed a beautiful baby, and Adam already dreamed of teaching him everything he knew. But a surprise was about to change the course of their lives. Fate had a surprise in store that would overturn all their plans. The months of pregnancy passed without a hitch, and they couldn't wait to welcome their baby. One morning, Liza's water broke, and the couple rushed to the hospital, excited for the arrival of their baby. In the delivery room, however, the doctors discovered that the baby was not positioned well. They rushed to the operating room for an emergency C-section. Despite the tension, Liza was calm, convinced that everything would be fine. She couldn't imagine that the love she felt would be put to the test, a test that neither she nor Adam would be able to overcome. After 20 minutes of operation, the doctors brought the baby into the world, but were shocked by the newborn's appearance. Despite all the checks and ultrasounds, no one had predicted that the baby would suffer from hypertrichosis, a rare medical condition characterized by excessive hair growth. Adam and Liza's newborn not only suffered from this, but also had a hump, a deformity that could have caused various problems, such as respiratory and postural. While the doctors took care of the little one's health, Liza was absorbed in different reflections. Their son was very different from the ideal of perfection they had imagined. Seeing her son for the first time, Liza reacted with a cry of terror. "This can't be my son!" he shouted at the nurses. "Take him away, he's a monster! I don't want to see him!" Adam had an even more violent reaction, blaming the doctors for the child's appearance and refusing to accept him as his son. Once the spirits had calmed down, the doctors assured that although the necessary treatments would be arduous, there was still reason to hope. But for Adam and Liza, those words rang hollow. Where would they get the money for treatment from? And what would happen to their dream of a happy family and perfect children? Adam and Liza were overwhelmed with anxiety. Returning home with their newborn, they spent sleepless nights, tormented by the idea of what people would think of their child. In his first days of life, the little boy often fell ill, making hospital visits frequent. One evening, Adam and Liza came to the painful conclusion that this was not the life they wanted. They didn't want an existence marked by sacrifices, fears, and renunciations. They then decided that that child could not grow up with them. Perhaps the little boy, with a face so different that it even scared his parents, would find someone capable of offering him the love he really deserved. With this painful decision, they took the child to an orphanage, quickly said goodbye, and walked out of his life forever. At that moment, Adam and Liza could not imagine what they would have to experience for the rest of their lives. At the orphanage, the child was given the name Nicholas. Here, he spent his first years proving to be a caring and sweet child, although no one seemed to want to adopt him. He saw his classmates leaving the institution for loving families one after another, and his heart broke at the thought of never finding a home. One day, when Nicholas was 9 years old and seemed to have lost all hope, George and Sarah, a wealthy couple in their 40s, visited the orphanage with the desire to start a family. As soon as they saw Nicholas, they fell in love with that reserved child with sweet eyes and decided that he would become their son, showering him with love and care. Since leaving the orphanage, Nicholas began to shine like a star. George and Sarah kept their promise, making the child always feel loved and accepted, and financed the best medical care possible. Surrounded by affection, Nicholas learned to accept himself despite the abundant hair that had always made him feel different from others. The therapies were long and complex, but in the end, they managed to first slow down and then block the various hormonal dysfunctions. Once he regained his self-confidence, there was no challenge that Nicholas could not overcome. A brilliant student, he graduated from high school with top marks and then studied medicine, graduating with honors and becoming a highly sensitive doctor and surgeon, dedicating his life to helping others. He was in his office when, after a complicated operation, his phone rang. He had to return to the operating room immediately. A patient who needed urgent surgery following a serious road accident had just arrived. Without hesitation, Nicholas ran into the operating room, but stopped as soon as he saw the man on the table. His jaw dropped. It was like looking at himself, but older. Nicholas and the patient looked incredibly alike, and everyone in the operating room noticed it. Despite the urgency, no one spoke. We had to act quickly. The operation lasted 5 hours, but it was a success. Tired but relieved, Nicholas went to the waiting room to inform the patient's wife that the surgery had gone well. However, looking closely at that doctor, the woman was shocked. Nicholas gave her an update on her husband's health, said goodbye, and started to leave when the woman stopped him. She apologized for her initial reaction and explained that he reminded her very much of her son, a child she and her husband had abandoned many years earlier for health reasons. "Not a day goes by without regretting that choice," he confessed. "Perhaps my son could have become a doctor too, if only we had chosen to love him." The woman also revealed that, after giving up their first child, they had no longer been able to have other children, which had increased their regret for that irreparable mistake. When she mentioned that the baby was born with a hump and was covered in hair, Nicholas fled the hospital, leaving the woman behind, and returned home. He was shocked. He felt his heart in his throat. He was the child he was talking about. He was the son that couple had abandoned. If you're enjoying the story, it would be kind of you to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now let's continue. He immediately called Sarah, the mother who had raised him, asked her for explanations, and the next day they went to the orphanage to seek information on his biological parents. And there, he confirmed his suspicions. The man she saved was her biological father, and the woman in the waiting room was her mother. 2 days later, Nicholas visited Adam in the hospital room. As he approached, his heart pounded and his eyes filled with tears. Once he entered the room, Adam and Liza looked at him in silence. "You can forgive yourself for what you did to your son," Nicholas said sadly. "He has already forgiven you." Liza burst into tears and came over to hug him. Nicholas also let a tear escape, but he immediately wiped it away, then turned and left the room without ever looking back. He did not tell his biological parents clearly who he was and did not want to know if they understood. It was better this way, he thought. Better not to reopen old wounds. After all, he already had 2 parents who had loved and accepted him from the first moment, and from whom he had learned to put the past behind him and focus on his future. And that was exactly what Nicholas intended to do that day too. Leave the past, the regrets and the pain behind, and move forward. How do you think Nicholas could have reacted? Maybe trying to understand more about the choice made by his biological parents? Or was he right to leave everything behind?